It is Sunday, August 2nd, 2026, and this is The High Road, Logistics and Leadership. I'm Elena Rossi, and I'm here to ensure we don't let the shiny new tech distract us from the very real risks on the pavement today.
This is Buck Reynolds.
I'm Jules Sterling.
And I'm Dan Miller. We have a great show for you today.
Yesterday, we covered decision velocity and agentic AI, US DOT Genesis mission, and cancellation of the Trans-Canada Automated Truck Project.
Right? The Trans-Canada news was a total shocker.
Look, it was an ROI move, plain and simple. The suits pulled the plug because the math didn't hold up in the high-density corridors.
Well, actually, my thing is that it was more about the low governmental risk appetite. But regardless, today we have to pivot to something even more immediate. The borders are heating up, and not just because of the August sun.
Here's the deal. The California-Mexico border just saw one of the biggest narcotics hits I've seen in a while, and it's a wake-up call for every fleet manager in this room.
Actually, Buck, it's a tragedy for the carrier involved. Federal authorities at the Calexico East Port of Entry just finalized the details on a $20 million cocaine seizure. It happened late July 29, but the detailed case files just hit our desks.
20 million? That's a serious hit to the supply chain situation, not to mention the legal nightmare.
Exactly. We're talking over 1,000 pounds of cocaine. It was meticulously stuffed beneath the wooden floorboards of a flatbed trailer hauling, 269 bundles of rebar.
Rebar. That's so standard. It's the perfect Trojan horse cargo, isn't it? Sort of hide the high-value illicit stuff under the heavy, low-value construction material?
I mean, that's the classic cartel playbook. You take a 44-year-old driver like Jose Manuel Lopez, put him in a truck he supposedly picked up from a commercial lot, and tell him to head to Phoenix.
Actually, he's pleading not guilty. Claims he had no idea the floorboards were stuffed with 366 individual packages.
Wow. Can you imagine that conversation with the shipper? Sorry, your rebar is being held as evidence because our floorboards were essentially made of blow.
Bottom line, Jules, this is exactly what the examiner was talking about regarding the industrialization of cargo fraud. These cartels are using legitimate commercial lanes to move product because the volume is so high, it's hard to check every board.
Well, that's where the NII, the non-intrusive inspection tech, comes in. CBP is getting way better at seeing through those floorboards without pulling the rebar off.
But it raises the liability bar for the broker and the carrier. If you're a carrier and you're not hardening your tech to monitor these trucks at commercial lots, you're basically, you're an accessory waiting to happen.
Right? And speaking of liability bars being raised, did you all see the C.H. Robinson verdict? It's essentially a $604 million earthquake for the brokerage world.
$604 million? Look, that's not just a verdict. That's a corporate death sentence if you aren't diversified.
It's the post-Montgomery era. Ever since the Supreme Court stripped the F4A liability shield, brokers are being treated as if they were the ones behind the wheel.
The thing is, the jury in Dallas didn't care that the carrier had a satisfactory rating from the FMCSA. They said the broker should have known the carrier was a risk anyway.
It's that social inflation Dan is always talking about. Juries are looking for deep pockets when the carrier goes insolvent, right?
Precisely. And with cargo theft and fraud hitting a 5-year peak, the insurance premiums are they're becoming a line item that can break a small carrier.
Hey, before we move on to the market data, I have a quick note from our sponsor. Strategic logistics requires world-class engineering, and this show is powered by the stack developed by Eric Christensen at Neural Network Media.
If you value the tech that brings these insights to your ears, support the architect behind the code. Visit our Patreon at patreon.com/neural network media for a free trial and access to our daily briefing PDF. It's how we keep the lights on and the data flowing.
Support the tech, people. It's what keeps us 3 steps ahead on the chessboard. Speaking of the board, let's pivot to the earners.
I assume we're talking about Schneider. They always seem to be the one everyone's watching when things get tight.
You bet, Buck. Schneider National, ticker SNDR, just beat expectations. Adjusted EPS of 29 cents when the street was looking for 23, and they did it on $1.6 billion in revenue.
That's sort of impressive given how tight the market is, right? What was the secret sauce this quarter?
Look, it's pricing vanguard behavior. CEO Jim Filter called the market driver constraint. They aren't just chasing every load, they're shifting volume back to contracts at higher rates because they know the spot market is finally testing prior cycle highs.
Actually, I noticed they raised their full-year guidance, but reduced their capital expenditure. They're focusing on tractor modernization rather than just buying more trailers.
Yeah, makes sense. You can't run a fleet if you can't maintain it. And with diesel crack spreads being all over the place, you want the most fuel-efficient iron on the road.
Is this the MVP move for the quarter, Dan? Or are there others in the mix?
Old Dominion is also in the winner's circle. They hit an operating ratio of 70.1%. That's basically an efficiency masterclass. Even with tonnage down a bit, their revenue grew 10% because they have the leverage to demand better yields.
70%? Whew. Oh man, that's lean. Back in my driving days, we were happy if the company was hovering in the 80s.
It's proof that operational excellence is the only way to survive this forced equilibrium. If you aren't lean, the regulatory burdens like these new carb mandates will just eat your lunch.
Speaking of being lean, FedEx is taking that to the next level in Hagerstown, isn't it? I mean, they're literally replacing the leaning with robots.
Here's the deal. These physical AI bots from Dexterity? I don't know. Can a robot really pack a trailer as well as a guy who's been doing it for 20 years?
Actually, according to the Hagerstown Hub reports, these robots are becoming more consistent than human loaders. They don't get tired, they don't get heat stroke in a July trailer, and they don't have bad days.
Bottom line, it's about throughput. FedEx is scaling this because they need the dock to move at the same speed as their sorting algorithms. If the human loader is the bottleneck, they're going to automate the loader. Now it's time for the week ahead, our Sunday segment where we look at the critical market markers and chess moves for the coming week of August 3rd.
Okay, Dan, set the stage. What's the first square we're looking at?
Square one is Monday, August 3rd. We've got the ISM Manufacturing PMI. The street is expecting a return to expansion with a reading of 54. If we hit that, it's the first real sign that industrial freight demand is finally waking up from the 2025 trough.
And that should trickle down to the LTL carriers pretty quickly, right?
Exactly, Jules. If manufacturing picks up, those regional cross-docks start humming. Then on Wednesday, we move to the ISM Services PMI. Forecast is at 54.5. That's our consumer demand engine. If that beats, the last mile guys are going to have a very busy Q3.
What about the fuel? That EIA petroleum report on Wednesday always makes me nervous.
Here's the play, Buck. We just saw a 7 million barrel draw in crude. Inventories are at 52-week lows. If Wednesday shows another draw, expect diesel surcharges to tighten the screws on margins, right when everyone is trying to plan for the peak season.
I mean, if Brent crude stays around $56 a barrel, we might see some relief. But the volatility is, well, it's the precursor to catastrophe if you haven't hedged your fuel costs.
Look, my watch list pick for the week is SAIA. S-A-I-A. They are aggressively reopening those former yellow terminals, 18 to 21 new facilities this year. Their ability to activate those sites is the X factor for LTL pricing stability.
So more capacity coming online, but focused in specific high-value nodes?
Exactly. And watch Friday's non-farm payrolls. Last month was a miss. If we miss again, the Fed might have to pull a dovish pivot, which lowers the cost of capital for all you fleet managers looking to buy those new Class 8 rigs.
I'll believe a lower cost of capital when I see the invoice, Dan.
The week ahead. That's a wrap. Let's get into the main story, because it ties everything we just talked about. The tech, the money, and the capacity.
We're talking Aurora Innovation. They just dropped their Q2 earnings, and, actually, it's the most significant roadmap we've seen for autonomous commercialization.
They're aiming for an $80 million revenue run rate by the end of this year? That sounds ambitious.
Look, the math is there. They're scaling to 200 fully driverless trucks across the Sun Belt by year end. If each truck generates $400,000 a year in TaaS revenue, trucking as a service, the 80 million number isn't just a fantasy.
200 silicon drivers out there without anyone in the cab? I mean, we've talked about this. A LiDAR sensor can't smell a failing wheel bearing or hear a manifold leak before it becomes a fire.
But Buck, the Aurora Driver 2 hardware they just launched, they're arguing that the sensor fusion is actually superior to human perception in many night driving and long-haul scenarios. They're targeting 20,000 revenue miles per truck per month.
And they're shifting to a driver-as-a-service model in 2027. That's the real diplomat move, isn't it? They provide the brain, and carriers like Schneider or Hirschbach provide the iron.
Right. Hirschbach just committed to 500 Aurora-powered trucks. Their play is using autonomous for the middle mile long hauls and letting their human drivers do the regional home daily routes.
Here's the deal. It sounds good for retention. I'll give them that. Nobody wants to be away from home for 3 weeks at a time anymore. But $80 million in revenue is still a drop in the bucket compared to their cash burn.
Actually, they lost $270 million this quarter, but they still have $1.2 billion in the bank. They're trading capital for market dominance, hoping to be the first to reach true scale.
It's a high-stakes chess game, Dan. If they hit that $80 million run rate, do you think it finally forces the skeptics to look at the ROI differently?
Look, when you can run a truck 20 hours a day between Dallas and Houston without worrying about HOS violations, the ROI becomes undeniable. The suits won't be able to ignore it.
I just hope they don't ignore the maintenance requirements. An autonomous truck sitting on the side of I-10 because of a 50-cent O-ring is still a truck that isn't making money.
And the liability. If an autonomous truck is involved in one of those Texas pileups we saw with C.H. Robinson, the legal framework is, it's a complete crime scene of finger-pointing between the software dev and the fleet owner.
That's sort of why the DaaS model is so clever, Elena. It creates a clearer line of where the driver's responsibility ends and the truck's begins.
Bottom line, we are at the inflection point. We aren't talking about if anymore. We're talking about how many and how fast.
Well, just make sure those silicone drivers know how to handle black ice when they decide to head north of the Sun Belt.
That's all for today's High Road. From $20 million rebar to $600 million verdicts and $80 million robot fleets, the margin for error in logistics has never been thinner.
Bye.
See ya.
Peace.
Keep your eyes on the road and your sensors calibrated.